Dear students, today we are going to study second chapter in MCB, Feathered Friend. So under the theme Exploring Space, this feathered friend will come. So as per the theme and the chapter, this story is also related with exploring space. Last class we already seen about the space station, isn't it? So in this chapter also space in the space station itself, the entire story is going on. The main characters in the stories are the narrator, Jim, a small bird called canary, but everyone is calling that bird as Claribel. One more important character is there, Sven Olsen. So in this story we can say that the main role is played by Sven Olsen and this feathered friend called Canary, named as Claribel. So let's begin. The narrator is surprised to discover a canary in the space station. But how did it get there? Read on to find out. To the best of my knowledge, there's never been a rule that forbids one to keep pets in a space station. And even had such a rule existed, I am quite certain that Sven Olsen would have ignored it. But I must admit that his selection was very sensible. Claribel weighed particularly nothing, her food requirements were minimal, and she was not worried as most animals would have been by the absence of gravity. So in this paragraph we can see Claribel was a small canary and weighed very less. Her food requirements were minimal and she was not bothered by the absence of gravity also. So the narrator felt that Sven's selection was very sensible as they could observe or study her movements in space easily without any trouble. In the first paragraph itself, narrator says that a great role is there for the feathered friend called Claribel. I first became aware that Claribel was aboard the space station when I was sitting in my office checking through my list to decide what items we would be running out of next. When I heard the musical whistle beside my ear, I assumed that it had come out the station intercom and waited for an announcement to follow. It didn't instead there was a long and involved pattern of melody that made me look up with such a start. It was then that I had my first view of Claribel. So this narrator says that he also don't know how this Claribel entered in the space station. Now let's see what are the physical appearance of this Claribel. She was small yellow canary hanging in the air as motionless as a hummingbird, and with much less effort for her wings were carefully folded along her sides. We stared at each other for a minute. Then, before I had quite recovered my wits, she did a curious kind of backward loop no earthbound canary had ever managed and departed with a few leisurely flicks. It was quite obvious that she would already learned how to operate in the absence of gravity and did not believe in doing unnecessary work. So it's very clear that narrator was quite surprised to see the canary aboard the space station. From these sentences we can analyze it. The expressions look up with such a start and before I had quite recovered my wits show that the narrator was very surprised to see the canary aboard the space station. Moving on, Sven didn't confess to her ownership for several days, and by that time it no longer mattered because Claribel was a general pet. He had smuggled her up on the last ferry from Earth when he came back from leave. Partially, he claimed out of sheer scientific curiosity. He wanted to see just how a bird would operate when it had no weight but could still use its wings. So now it's clear that Sven collected from the earth itself this Clarabel, isn't it? So last ferry means aircraft that bring passengers or goods. So when they started before the journey itself, Sven very much cunningly for like an experiment, Sven collected this Clarabel and placed in the space station. So dear students, from the above paragraph, we could see that they lived in that space station several days, who are the main characters also. Moving on, Clarabel thrived and grew healthily. On the whole, we had little trouble concealing our unauthorized guest when VIPs from Earth came visiting. So here, unauthorized guest is who? This bird itself. Without officials' permission, our Sven Olsen, permitted this uh, canary, yellow canary, in the space station, isn't it? So a space station has more hiding places when you can count. The only problem was the Clarabel got rather noisy when she was upset. We sometimes had to think fast to explain the curious peeps and whistles that came from ventilating shafts and storage bulkheads. Bulkheads means walls that divide the inside in an aircraft. There were a couple of narrow escapes, but then who would dream of looking for a canary in a space station? Moving on, next paragraph. We were now on 12-hour watches. Though, of course, there is no day or night when you are floating in permanent sunlight. It was still convenient to stick to the terms. Certainly, when I woke up that morning, it felt like 6 a.m. on Earth. I had a nagging headache and vague memories of fitful, disturbed dreams. So fitful disturbed dreams means dreams that continue for only short periods and which disturb sleep. Now can you say, why do you think there is no night and day in space? So most of your thought is very much right. Days and nights are caused because of Earth's rotation around the sun. So as they are in space and not on Earth, they are not rotating around the sun and hence they experience no days and nights. Moving on, next paragraph. It took me ages to undo my bunk straps, and I was still only half awake when I joined the remainder of the duty crew, the mess. Breakfast was unusually quiet, and there was one seat vacant. Where's Sven? I asked. Who is this I? Narrator itself. He is looking for Clarabel. Someone answered, says he can't find her anywhere. She usually wake up him up. So most probably this voice is made by Jim itself. Jim is the cook. Says he can't find her anywhere. So our Sven can't find this yellow canary bird anywhere because usually this canary itself making that chirping voice and making him to wake up. Moving on, before I could retort that she usually woke up me too, Sven came in through the doorway. We could see at once that something was wrong. He slowly opened his hand and there lay a tiny bundle of yellow feathers with two clenched claws sticking pathetically up into the air. Pathetically means in a way that makes you feel sorry, causing feelings of sadness and sympathy. So our Clarabel is very much pathetically looking and lying, isn't it? What happened? We asked, all equally distressed. So here we means narrator and Jim itself. I don't know, said Sven mournfully. Mournfully means very much sad way. I just found her like this. Now can you say what happened to Clarabel? Actually, we know that they are in space, isn't it? So lack of oxygen itself, most probably. Let's see what happened. We all waited in hushed silence while he held Claribel against his ear in an attempt to detect any heartbeat. Presently, he shook his head. I can't hear anything, but that doesn't prove she's dead. I have never listened to a canary's heart, he added rather apologetically. Give her a shot of oxygen, suggested somebody, pointing to the green banded emergency cylinder besides the door. So in our school also emergency cylinders are there, isn't it? For putting off the fire. Likewise, oxygen cylinders also available in the space station. Everyone agreed that this was an excellent idea, and Claribel was tucked snugly into a face mask that was large enough to serve as a complete oxygen tent for her. To our delighted surprise, she revived. Revived means she became conscious at once. Beaming broadly, Sven removed the mask and she hopped onto his finger. She gave her series of sharp trills and promptly keeled over again. So here, sharp trills means short, high-pitched, repeated notes. Keeled over means collapse suddenly because of tiredness or illness. So still, our canary is not okay, isn't it? Name of that canary is Claribel. I don't get it. Lamented Sven. Lamented means expressed sadness or disappointment over something. What's wrong with her? She's never done this before. For the last few minutes, something had been tugging at my memory. My mind seemed to be sluggish that morning as if I was still unable to cast off the burden of sleep. I felt that I could do with some of that oxygen, but before I could reach the mask, understanding exploded in my brain. I whirled on the duty engineer and said urgently, Jim, there's something wrong with the air. That's why Claribel passed out. I have just remembered that miners used to carry canaries down to warn them of gas. So our Sven Olsen revealed that miners also taking this type of canary bird to the underground tunnels. Likewise, he also took this canary for like an experiment, like an alarm. So here, when canary became in dangerous zone, others also got a alarm. There is a lack of oxygen level, isn't it? Nonsense, said Jim. The alarms would have gone off. We have got duplicate circuits operating independently. The second alarm circuit is not connected up yet, his assistant reminded him. That shook Jim. He left without a word while we stood arguing and passing the oxygen bottle around like a pipe of peace. He came back 10 minutes later with a sheepish expression. It was one of those accidents that couldn't possibly happen. We had one of our rare eclipses by Earth's shadow that night. Part of the air purifier had frozen up, and the single alarm in the circuit had failed to go off. $500,000 worth of chemical and electronic engineering had let us down completely. Without Claribel, we should soon have been slightly dead. Now let's know what is this sheepish expression. Actually, try giving a sheepish smile to your partner. So when do people have sheepish expression of their faces? Do you know? Actually here Jim have confidence about the missions and alarm. But Swan said that it's not working properly. So during that situation, he gone and checked and came after 10 minutes. So here, sheepish expression. It is an expression one has when they have done something wrong or embarrassing. So now, if you visit any space station, don't be surprised if you hear an inexplicable snatch of bird song. Inexplicable snatch means that which cannot be explained or accounted for. Snatch means a short part or very small piece. There is no need to be alarmed. On the contrary, in fact, it will mean that you are being doubly safeguarded at particularly no extra expense. So pick out the humor in the last paragraph of the text. While understanding that last paragraph, we can see that it is because of the canary that they escaped from danger, isn't it? So the narrator humorously says that the presence of a canary in a space station would mean extra or double protection at no extra cost.